What's happening? Alright, so you haven't heard from me in a little bit, and the reason being is because I have been too busy working on this bitch. Yes, I've been building stuff, building sheds, and I don't like it. I hate doing construction work. It is not my bag. And I was basically putting all car projects on hold until the shed was done, because knowing me, I would not work on both things at the same time. So I had to really double down and focus on getting this done. As you can see, it's not quite done. We're almost there. I've got a few things to finish. I've got to do paint, got to do a little bit of sealing. I got to finish out the roof, the whole nine. But what we're going to do is I've got a couple of maintenance jobs that are coming up. I've got a friend of mine who needs a clutch replaced. So I'm going to do that. That's not today. Today's video is not that. And I've got a couple of other items. The items that I'm going to work on today is, and I know these aren't super exciting, these aren't actually Bernadette, this isn't Mildred, this isn't Midge, which if you've been on Instagram you saw that I got Midge the Miata now, and I will do a video on her. She's got some weird shit already. Anyway, today's video is just some mundane ass stuff. We're going to do a brake change on a 2004 Altima. I know most of you have done brake changes before, but we're going to do pads and rotors. It's just a quick maintenance job. Depending on how I'm feeling, I got to do an oil change on my wife's 08 SI. So we're going to go ahead and get that done. I'm going to get out into the garage because as you can see, you're in my lovely big backyard. So let's go back to where you normally find me, which is in the garage. It's cluttered right now. That's why we have a shed. We're getting rid of the clutter inside the garage by doing a shed. So stay tuned. All right, so we're back. I'm not going to do this in the garage just because it's full in there. I've got all sorts of stuff, and today's just a quick job. So with brakes, it is a quick thing. You shouldn't have too much trouble. You want to make sure that this is an automatic. So we've got it. It's sitting in park, and the e-brake is on. Normally, I would say we're going to put this on jack stands and chalk the wheels and all that stuff. That's way too much for this. I'm literally going to do this one side at a time. But I would highly recommend get yourself a page out of the FSM, the Factory Service Manual, if you're not familiar. These are available online. You can find them at a variety of places. I'll go ahead and put a link in the description for where I got this. But this is going to show you all of the torque specs that you're going to need, and I would highly recommend following that on any job that you do, so that way you have peace of mind knowing that it's done right. So first things first, I've got all my tools out here. I've got my torque specs. I'm going to go ahead and get this wheel taken off, or loosened, jack it up, and then take it off, and then I'll be back and I'll point out what we're going to be doing later. Well, not later, but coming right back. What I've done here is I have already taken the wheel off, obviously. Yeah, bad of me that I have it just on the jack, but it's whatever. What I've done is I've turned the wheel to face the outermost way to give you the most access to this brake caliper. If you don't, it's a terrible pain to try and use a wrench in here, so you want to give yourself as much clearance as possible. So when we put a wrench on these sockets, we have ample clearance out here, and we can use breaker bars, all that stuff. What we're going to do is today we're going to be changing the pads, which are located here. And we're also going to change the rotors. We've got a little bit of variance, like when the pedal is pushed, the steering wheel shakes just a little bit, like as if the rotors are warped. So we're going to do the pads as well as the rotor, so we should be all good to go. If you were doing just pads, you would be able to go ahead and take off these slide bolts by themselves, and just the center portion of the caliper would come free, allowing you to swap out the pads. But because we're doing both, what we're going to do is I'm going to use these back bolts, which actually mount to the hub itself. This is a 19 millimeter. Yep, 19 millimeter on this, and there's two of them. There's one right here, and then there's one down here, if you can see where my finger is. that's going to release the entire caliper assembly, which we don't, which we'll get to. And then these slide bolts right here are 14s. So let's go ahead and get the caliper off, so then we can start taking the pads and take a look at those. So I've broken all these loose. Now I know I told you I was going to take off the entire assembly. I did go ahead and break these loose because there's a reason for this. Let's go ahead and take these off real quick. I just want to illustrate that, keep your bolts straight. I just want to illustrate a point here. So we've got top and we've got bottom, and this whole thing should come off, right? And it's hard to do with one-handed. All right, so doing it this way allows you to just pull the caliper off, and you'll see here that the pads are on there, and pads are okay. I think we just have a bit of a warped rotor, but anyway, we're gonna patch all that up. But what I was more so wanting to get into, let's go ahead and set this right here. All right, so we've got that set here. Now these pins, okay, these pins, let's see if I can't get the rubber off here. We're gonna go ahead and, all right, this guy right here, you want to double check this to make sure that it is good, it's lubricated, and that it is not going to seize. I've seen in instances in which I've swapped brakes and it took a long time, or my caliper seized up because these pins didn't have any lubrication on it. I know this kind of gets overlooked, but and it doesn't seem very important, but it is when it comes time for you to fix a seized caliper. So you want to take these out, look at it, make sure that it's got a little bit of lubrication. This one looks good. We're going to take a look at this. And all right, so that's looking pretty decent. I've actually, what I'm going to do, just because I like to overkill things, is I've got this old thing of synthetic blend grease that I've been using for a million years, and I will actually take out these pins, and I'm just going to give it a little dab in there, and then work that in. Basically, I want to make sure that that is good and lubricated. I know this looks so good. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Just make sure that it's in there, good and lubricated. Make sure to get all that noise. All right, so we'll wipe off the extra there, pack it in there, make sure that we've got this sleeved back on, and we're gonna do the same for the other one. We're gonna take it out, we're gonna dip it in here a little bit, get a little extra boil in there, and kind of just get it in there and get it all sloppy. That sound, that's the sound of good brake lubrication. Yeah. So we've got that in there. It looks like this is well and good. These are going to move freely. This will allow our caliper to move as needed. Yeah, so there's that. Let me go ahead and I'm going to take off the rest of this assembly, and I'll come back here in a second. It's easier to work with two hands. Okay, so I got this off here. I popped this guy off here, and honestly, the pads aren't terrible. I mean, there's quite a bit of pad left. In fact, if you kind of squint your eye, you'll see here that you've got quite a bit before we get to the indicator, which that's fine. These, like I said, we've got the reason that we started looking to changing the brakes is we had a little bit of wobble when lightly applying the brakes, which would indicate that the rotor was warped. So in looking at the rotor, I'm going to pop this brake out real quick. Come on. Of course, I would pull it the wrong way. All right, so once again, both pads aren't terrible. They've got plenty of pad on there. It's all right. We're gonna replace them. And you've got these clips also. I'm actually using some Power Stop Evolution ceramic. These actually are from not from Harbor Freight, Rock Auto. So Rock Auto, they weren't terribly priced. I think like 20 bucks or something like that. Not terrible. And then we've got rotor also. That was Raybestos. Anyway, the total cost was $68 to do the entire front side, so that's not bad. But anyway, what I was going to show you is The entire surface over here looks good. At an angle, you can kind of see like everything's even until you get to about here. And I don't know what that is. That looks like a little bit of uneven wear pattern all the way around. So I don't know if that was where we were starting to see the wobble come from, or the way that this is deviating. So we're gonna change it anyway, and get everything squared away. So let me go ahead and load up these pads and go from there. Alright, so I've got the pads loaded. They're back in there. It did come with some new hardware. Now, okay, so these are the little shims that kind of help, I would imagine, just keep pressure on the pads. I was having trouble with it at first, and when you get this pad set, you'll notice here on the old guy, if you take the new one, line it over, that matches up perfectly. Well, my trouble was, I was trying to put on the this new one, and this one was actually a bigger size, so it looks like this kit, you'll notice like right here how this kind of laps over, doesn't quite match. So it looks like this particular brake kit or brake pad set is meant for more than one model, which is fine. No big deal. Just make sure that you're putting on the right stuff. So you'll want to measure that out. Here's my other two that I'm going to set aside for when I do the passenger side. So those are the old ones. We'll get rid of that. These are the big ones. We don't need those. As for rotors, super easy. There's nothing to them. They come right off. If yours are stuck, then you need to take maybe a rubber mallet. Something to, I mean, honestly, you could use a hammer, but just some sort of blunt object that you can go ahead and bang that off there with. It'll come right off the hub. Now, new one. This is important. When the new ones are being stored, when they come back from the factory, is they have a light layer of grease applied to them to prevent corrosion. So one thing that you'll want to do is get out some brake cleaner. It's not just for making sure that you have open cuts on your hand. It is to actually clean this stuff. So you want to get rid of that. I got a clean rag here, and just wipe it down and get rid of all of that oil. So that way we don't have any issues stopping. We're gonna flip this. We got some back here as well. So there's that. The rotor is super easy. It actually goes right back on there. You can clean this hub. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and clean it real quick. Alright, so this is gonna be super awkward, but I'm gonna show you a little trick that I did, that I found a while back. So when you're pushing this this caliper back in, because you have to make space for the new amount of pad, use your old brake pad, man. I used to try and line this up onto the piston itself, and it was never good. Like, I would always fall off, or it was always a constant pain in the ass. So basically I've just got this on the end of the nut there. It's no big deal. We're pushing on the old pad. You can see the old pad is just pushing that piston right back in. Super easy. Once you've got this pushed back as far as it'll go, which that's about it, go ahead and pop this off, which is hard to do when trying to do multiple things. So now that is ready to go back on. We need to go ahead and put our rotor on. So I did hit that with a wire brush. It's not great, but it'll do for right now. And as long as we don't drop that onto the brake line, we'll be fine. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to go ahead and start getting everything mounted, because this is extraordinarily hard to do one-handed. So yeah, let's do that. So final update here. I went ahead and when I put my rotor on, I put a couple of lug nuts back on there. These are just hand tightened right now. so that it holds the rotor in place while I put the caliper back on. These are all just hand tightened right now. Well, this one's a little further, but these are hand tightened right now to get everything in place. You can always get the stop squeak, the little packets. I use a little bit of this grease that I was telling you about earlier, and I put it just on the back on the caliper side, not on the pad side. So I do that on the rim of the piston, and I also do that on these two fingers here that touch the pad. I only just put a teeny tiny bit, just enough to kind of help aid in that vibration, so that way it's not squealing or anything like that. And yeah, if you put too much on there, your shit's gonna smoke and it's gonna feel like you're gonna think your stuff's on fire, but you don't need to. So all of this comes to the final piece. So this is the factory service manual. If you haven't seen these type of things before, it tells you everything you need to know and how to put this to spec. These two back bolts, these are the mounting bolts for the entire caliper assembly, or the bracket. You'll notice here that we've got a couple of numbers. I get my finger out of the way. You'll see here that there is a breakdown, a little key. So this is Newton meters, this is kilograms per meter, I believe, and then there's foot pounds. So we go to the third set, which is for American units for foot pounds. It's going to be 116 to 144. That's tremendous, but I went ahead and I set to the low end on this one for 116 on my torque wrench. And then you have these slide bolts here. These slide bolts are the ones that I was telling you about right there. If you look at the numbers here, we've got 22 to 31 Newton meters. And then we've got the second one is kilograms per meter, whatever that one is. And then we've got 16 to 23 all-American units here. I'm going to go ahead and set that to 23, which is on this guy. Normally I try and go on the high side on each one of them, but 116 for caliper bracket bolts seems like an awful lot, but we're just going to go to the low side. I think that'll be sufficient for this one. I'll get this torqued and then let's put the wheel back on. I mean, so you don't have to crack the line, you don't have to bleed anything. As soon as you push on the brake pad, on the brake pedal, it's going to readjust to where it needs to be. These power stop brakes do have a bedding process that is outlined on the box. I would say go ahead and follow that process. It's a series of acceleration to a certain speed. You decelerate rapidly to kind of help aid the pads to break in. So follow those procedures. But by and large, that was how to do brakes. I know this sounds like a stupid easy task, and a lot of people who have done brakes before are like, this is super dumb. Why are you doing a video on this? Not everybody has. Everybody's got to learn somewhere. So let's start on the easy tasks, and this guy is super easy. Anybody can do it. It doesn't cost very much money, and it saves you money by having to go to a shop to do it. So hopefully you found this helpful. I'm going to do this for the first time. I'm going to say, if you like this stuff, like it, subscribe it, ring that bell, do all that shit. I know it sounds corny, but I got to finally start branding this thing. So once again, here's old Shady Cakes here. Hopefully the next time that we talk, I will be doing something cool, like on the truck or on any of the other vehicles that I have here. Yeah, I'll see you next time.